What's up, and welcome back to the Crucible. We talked about it being an action-packed lineup, and now we head into the triple header. It will keep you on the edge of your seat. I am still joined this evening by Goose and Irish. You guys ready for the next game?
Yeah, I think more than definitely a lot of storylines going into this. Not only for Bandscoast but also Friendship Team. After losing in the grand final of Element 4, Wi-Fi retiring. I mean, there's just so much on the line, not only in this matchup but in the last two games of today also.
Yeah, and it's just a super tough loss for Friendship Team because again, they're a team that just very recently that the core of that team, Luminosity in Tier 1, and then kind of having a little bit of a fall, not quite being on Luminosity anymore, still battling it out in Tier 2 and Tier 3, but just losing a few players and kind of as a roster not quite falling apart, but having quite a few hardships recently.
So I guess on that, Friendship Team taking on Bandscoast. At this moment, Friendship Team is the undisputed of Group A, right? They didn't need to go the distance to get it finished. Both wins dramatic and over in regulation. Irish, they took on Reality TV. They took on Up Next. Is Bandscoast just going to be another notch in the belt for this team?
I think if it were the normal roster, I would say probably. Not definitely, but probably, because yes, these are console players. Yes, these are players that don't have a ton of comp experience. And with that main roster versus a former tier 1 roster, even with a, subbing out Wi-Fi for Ash, I'd say, yeah, they definitely had the leg up. But with Merc not just being the coach, but actually being a player on the team, this is going to be so much harder because just having one more a former tier 1 player in the roster makes it that much more difficult. But having a former hammer lifter and absolutely insane player, because even when he wasn't on TSM, when he was on wildcard for just that short stint, he was nasty. I think he's still nasty. It's gonna be it's just so tough to call this game.
So, Goose, Bandscoast has had anything but an easy path, right? A struggle between balancing initial aggression versus the reset needed to close out the rounds. It's almost if they know how they want to start, but they don't have the right tools when it comes to the end game. A roster change here as well, as he was just talking about. Is that the adaptation for how they're finally going to get their win today?
I think it is a great addition. I think, as you spoke about, Merc is such a mechanically great player, but also a player that can really lead a team. Just as he spoke about before, in that wildcard iteration, he was the IGL/shot caller. He's a player that can really just structure a team on the attack, or really set up and formulate a plan. And then with that, obviously, before this cast, I talked a little bit to Aiden Tax about their problems, what he thinks they need to fix. He said that they need to play more structured, play together more, not let those isolated picks go the way of their opponents. And I think having a player like Burke to really solve that problem immediately in the rounds, rather than just 1 to 2 timeouts, if you are lucky, is going to be a phenomenal thing for Bandscoast. Obviously, it will be a new experience, but something that I think they can play into almost immediately.
Well, they're going to need it, right? Because it's all on the line for Bandscoast with this triple header coming up. I know we were talking about it in the pre-show. I mean, there's a lot of implications right now, Goose. Isn't that correct?
Oh, I mean, that is most definitely correct. I mean, you have the last 3 games. If they lose one, especially against 1HP later on today, they are out. No play-ins, no playoffs. They're out of the group stage. So every win, even if this goes into overtime and they lose and they get that 1 point, anything they can get is very crucial. Obviously, it will eventually come down to beating 1HP. That'll be one of the more determining factors. But nonetheless, they not necessarily have to go near flawless, but those mistakes that we saw last week, they can't prop up. They don't have the opportunity to lose more than 2 matches. And with Clubhouse, one of Friendship Team's best maps, if not the best on the table, it really continues to get more dire.
So now that we have taken a look at the rosters and the players who are trying to leave their mark, we're looking at the battlefield itself. The map chosen today plays a pivotal role in shaping the narrative of this tournament. Irish, the story starts with the where. Take us there.
And yeah, like you were talking about, it's one of the better maps for Friendship Team, but again, just everything goes out the window with Merc. Like I hate to keep bringing it up, but like yes, Friendship Team is a very strong core. Yes, they are a tier 1 core with many players doing very well over several years at that level of play. But with Bandscoast, you get one of the best mechanical players to ever touch the game, a hammer lifter, someone who is like not only just on the SI winning team, but IGLing multiple teams for a long stretch of time. Like it's gonna be tough, but it's definitely so much more doable for Bandscoast right now.
So as the lobby starts to get finished being filled up here, Goose, I'm gonna come to you. Final thoughts on Clubhouse. Is it default enough that Bancoast stands a chance on this map, or are we gonna be over and done in a quick one?
I think that is another phenomenal factor of Clubhouse is a map that is very familiar, not only to the console scene, but just overall the competitive scene. A lot of those mistakes won't be as easy to make on a map like this, or rather be easier to fix. But I think what it's really going to come down to is Merc's position and how he's going to affect Stompin. In many rounds, a lot of the entry picks fall down to Stompin winning them. He has made a couple of poor decisions coming from the lack of structure and overall identity and experience from this young Bandscoast team. And I think whether or not Merc is right, besides Stompin in that entry position, or if he's sitting on a, support flex role, I think if he's going to have an effect on any player, it's going to be Stompin. And if he can't continue to make him be in good situations, then I don't really think they're going to get much far against Friendship Team.
So that's a fun question to bring up. Stompin, right? He's just been the undisputed frag leader for Bandscoast, and he showed it on several different tournaments he plays in. Roller Sundays saw him come in and bring out like a 14 and 4 KD on his first map, end up winning the finals there in a dramatic showing. With this powerhouse duo that's going to be coming on, is it going to show aggression? Are they going to be able to spot those gaps together, or is it too soon for these two players to kind of really build up that chemistry?
I mean, he's been a coach ever since Element. Obviously Stompin wasn't there. He's had time to really mesh with this core, mesh with this team, and obviously now almost for a month with this iteration of Stompin on the roster, I think Merc specifically has a really good idea on what the problems are, both on attack and defense, and also how to solve them. But as a coach, you can only really give guidance to your team. You can't fix those problems yourself unless you're in the lobby. That's exactly where Merc will find himself in today.
Okay, well, the stage has been set. We love Clubhouse. We love the defaultness of it, and we love the absolute impact that just the smallest mistakes can have on the outcome. It's a best of one. It's a sprint to the end. Irish, give us your final thoughts on what we're going into in this absolute, hopefully, arm.
I think it's going to be aggression and attempted lurking and just hard entering from Bandscoast, and it's just going to be up to whether Friendship Team can work together enough to just shut that down. I think they definitely can, and it's just going to be a war of attrition. I if you ask me to give my take on who is going to win this, I honest to God just could not give you an answer on that.
Okay, well, there you go. As it is with live Siege, sometimes there are some live Siege issues. So we are going to take a quick break as we get that lobby completely set up and ready to go. So sit back, relax, because when we come back, we're finally going to bring you the segment.
And we're back. We had the pre-show previously. We told you about the teams. We're not doing that 2 times. 1 time is absolutely plenty, so we're just getting straight into this. Friendship Team versus Bandscoast. I'm still Irish. He is still Goose. And even though you don't see our lovely faces, we are here casting this game for you. Blackbeard, the first band to get off the board. That's just standard.
Yeah, it is just a standard. I mean, Blackbeard almost slotting himself next to the greats like Blitz and Monty. Just not a lot of people like him. A band coming out from Maverick, more a little bit playing into how Clubhouse itself plays rather than a band like Blackbeard playing. Just the overall current meta. If you're now just joining us, Friendship Team, losing a player now, bringing up Ash or Ashiana, however you want to address him. Bandscoast For this game at least, we'll be subbing in Merc. Yes, that is correct. You are hearing that right. The invitational winner, ex-TSM player Merc, is slotting in next to the players like Stompin' and M80X. Not a phrase that I thought I would be saying, but again, a situation where we really will see how far this team can go.
Yeah, the first game that I ever casted for this game, I did a bunch of prep. It was a bunch of tier 3 teams, went through the history of absolutely everything, and I was like, okay, I have a good prediction. I know exactly what's going to happen. It's a team with really good players that's done very well historically up to right now, has had a few hardships, but against this other team that they're going up against, I feel like it's an easy, far-gone conclusion. And then they subbed in last-minute Onigiri, and it feels so very similar for this game, where, again, otherwise, if it was just Friendship Team versus the traditional Bandscoast lineup, I'd say, yeah, there's some shooters. There are definitely some shooters on Bandscoast, but, I mean, against a former Tier 1 team, it's just, Hydrogen Bomb versus C4, I suppose.
Yeah.
But with Merc in the lineup, it's just a completely different beast.
It's also kind of a situation where if you're not very familiar with how Siege works, and you just know Merc from maybe, playing a couple of, roller weekend tourneys or his stint with TSM, it's not even a fact where he brings a lot of just that raw mechanical capability, the capability to shut down those gunfights, but also as being previously, still is technically the coach for Bandscoast, he can bring a lot of immediate fixes to the problem we've been seeing on Bandscoast. The lack of structure and overall togetherness. Bandscoast have a lot of problems playing together, doubling up, especially on the defense. Keep in mind, one of the worst defenses in the entire league, only being beat by 1 HP, having a defensive recovery rate of 13% and a win rate of only 33%. This defense for Bandscoast has been essentially the wedge pin that has been costing them not only these rounds, but their very first 2 wins in the Crucible.
That seems like there's a little bit of speculation that we were having early on before this game got started of, is Merc going to be in that entry capability, or is he going to be playing a more flex support role? And on this castle, it seems like he's going to be doing that more flex support role, but the entry death is on a Smoke, a player that you really wouldn't want to lose in Friendship Team, are very quickly taking sight. Silent with another kill, and even though Franklin responds back in kind, it's still an advantage for Friendship Team, and still Monty's walking his way onto site. Friendship Team with complete control. We're seeing Merc's POV though, so he's just stepping back, holding the line as we get into this final execute, but gosh, it's just as slow encroaching as Friendship Team shut everyone out. And Bandscoast, Aiden is the last alive 1 versus 4 to retake, and it just seems completely undoable. Plant secured, and Silent with an ace.
Silent has been the star player, almost, kind of making his way after not having that much of a light being shined on him, really taking a step in the role, especially after losing a player, even all the way back before stage 2 of the NAL, that being Surf, and then now losing one of their, main players that's been with them for so long and have just been showed up in almost every game, being the main player, especially in those entry positions, getting a lot of those rounds when there are little to no opportunities for Friendship Team. Silent is there to create it, and I think this is also going to be a little bit of a theme, a story that we do have to look at, is if Bandscoast find a way to consistently shut down Silent, especially on the attack, will Friendship Team be able to prop up another play, or rather prop up a different kind of a system, strat, to deal with this defense? But again, with an ace to start off, you can't really complain.
The thing about Silent as a player is he's one of those very hot, very cold players. He will have games where the things that he's going for just don't work time after time. Spawn peek after spawn peek, he just gets killed after killed after killed. But every once in a while, he has games, and hopefully for Bandscoast's sake, this is not one of those games where that he just absolutely takes over. Seems like he is an unkillable Demon King. starting off with an ace in this round. Again, hopefully for Bandscoast, like you said, they can just shut him down as that star player. Because if they can't, he might just run away with it right here and right now. But it's a new round, it's a new day for Bandscoast, and they look to have a completely different fate from last round.
Also, I think it is relatively safe to say for now that Merc is going to be playing into, you know, that very aggressive second entry position, being paired with Stompin. Stompin being shut down last round. We talked about a whole lot on how it's important to shut down Silent, but if you could shut down Stompin, there are, you know, other players. Tax had, you know, some phenomenal games to start off their group stage. But it's kind of a situation where a lot of this team, not only, you know, just in the press, but in the server also, really relies on Stompin going huge, having a good game performance-wise. And to be fair, he hasn't really had a game where he's been slow, where he hasn't showed up. But again, it's going to be that overall presence, but Vic Bands just punishing Silent, the player that we talked so much about, just overextending, and Aiden with another.
Another closeout kill for Bandscoast. And now this blitz almost on an island, but the cover comes in. 2 kills for Friendship Team, and they're back in this trade, though, for Merc. Puts it down into a man advantage for Bandscoast, but they're locked off of sight. Friendship Team, if they can transition this into a take, if they can put that diffuser down, they could really get away with this. But another kill for Vic's Bands leaves Nick in a 1 versus 3. And the defense just closed that out. Yeah, like you were talking about, Merc just shuts that out. Yes, he's playing more supportive operators, but he's playing set and forget util that just lets him gun out like crazy.
Yeah, we can already see the immediate effect that Merc has, not only in just the overall, I think, even in the first round that Bandscoast lost, you can see that they were playing a little bit more structure, read into the overall push from Friendship Team relatively earlier on than they did in their first 2 matchups. But again, if you continue to have a player, whether it be Merc, Stompin, or even Aiden, show up big, then you usually have success. That raw mechanical gun skill from players has not been a Bandscoast problem. It's been that structure. It's been playing doubled up in that last round. Exactly what Bandscoast did, doing a phenomenal job at just simply denying those quick takes from Friendship just by sheer manpower and making sure that those isolated attackers were going to be punished by a 1v2, maybe even sometimes a 1v3, and just no real multi-directional push made it relatively easy for Bandscoast to shut that down and get an answer back in a round of their own.
It was also in the very early part of that round, both you and I were talking about, can they shut down Silent? He started off the game with an ace, and the first kill in that second round was just an immediate shutout of Silent. So it seems like what we were hoping for is coming through. It's just a back and forth and back and forth. Yes, Merc doing well. Yes, Friendship Team having individual plays and also playing together. It's just the back and forth that both you and I were expecting, but also really wanted out of this matchup. The Friendship Team once again walking that Monty in through dirt, but because the same exact thing happened in the first round, Bandscoast looked very aware of it with that barricade.
The thing, though, is because the barricade's being shot, they are more than aware of Eddie's position, but they left it vacant. Kind of a sense where Bandscoast was okay with this position being taken, and it should give the idea that they are able to deal with that, but somehow Silent just peeking his head out, missing the gun of Merc. A huge gap being left up specifically by that castle allows for the very first pick in a phenomenal opening for Friendship Team in this round.
It's still going to be pretty tough for this Monty to take space. But as the frag grenades go out, and a C4 to follow! Double kill for Merc and Franklin. Finding that C4 pick onto Silent means that that dirt play is just completely shut down. Even though Nick backfills, he's going to be filling onto a position with no shield and nothing to safely take space. If he wants to push forward, he's either baiting for kills or he's walking into a crossfire, and Bandscoast seem very well aware that Nick is right here. So call goes out. The info for Friendship Team, but it's still man advantage for Bandscoast. And he walks into sight. Nick taking space. I got it right the first time. Bandscoast kills, locking off Friendship Team. And Ash the last player, the newest player to the roster, is set into a 1 versus 4 against almost the entirety of Bandscoast, even with 40 seconds left. If he drops the hatch, he's dead. If he goes back to his main stairs, he's dead. And it seems like if he just sits on the hatch, he's also dead. Bandscoast with 2 rounds in a row and a quick answer to Friendship Team's very early aggression.
Gotta up the quality a little bit to 1080.
Oh, that's really nice. I thought that was just for us.
Oh,
I thought that was just bad vmix quality for us.
No,
Okay,
no, it was just
wow.
the YouTube feed. I don't want to be too mean-spirited. We've had a lot of technical issues today. The fact that we've been able to put on the very first 2 games on stream is kind of
yeah, give us
a
a pat on the
blessing.
back.
Yeah, it's a blessing. But nonetheless, a phenomenal back-to-back round from Bandscoast. Friendship Team just putting way too much, really, I guess you could say, effort into that dirt presence. Flooding 3 players, all dying. It's just a simple C4. Killing both Silent and the Monty, just shutting down that entire round, essentially. There was no real other win factor. Nobody playing inside of blue. Nobody trying to go down main stairs. Aside from dirt in the hatch dropping kitchen, it's kind of a situation where Bandscoast just had to hold their angles, wait for the flood and drop and shut them down. And if Friendship Team continue to have these relatively easy executes, then Bandscoast, they're going to eat it up like barbecue chicken.
It's an interesting call. I like that though. It's a very unique. I don't think I've ever heard someone reference barbecue chicken when saying that a team is doing quite well, but I might work that into my lingo. Either way, Eddie's swapping off the Monty because it really didn't net Friendship Team a lot of benefits. It helped them out in the early round because it gave Silent the ability to just sit behind and get kill after kill after kill, but after 2 rounds of it not working in a row, it seems like Friendship Team are more than happy to cut their losses, and Eddie, especially on this top floor, swapping onto that Capital will give them a completely different way to pressure out those rafter stairs as Silent works the vertical.
And it's just kind of this, simple problem solving where, Friendship Team just tries to find a problem, that being this breach, and just use all of their manpower, all of their focus to just get rid of it. Not trying to attack different points around the map, kind of depleting their overall manpower on those points, trying to have one very, powerful spot. Not exactly sure if they were able to get that wall open, but again, no immediate pressure from Vic Bands. Playing the dock is a phenomenal way to deny space. Even if Eddie is able to get a couple of those Capital firebolts, Vic Bands just sits there, waits out the time, and heals himself. So it's going to be up to Friendship Team to have an additional player to try and clear out Vic Bands, unless he's just going to sit here and just waste the time of Friendship.
What?
Oh, come on, no!
He mistimed it, and the asphyxiation bolt kills him, takes rafters, and the early pressure for Friendship Team works out. Just a mistimed utility play, and another kill for Kicks means that Friendship Team, in a 2-man advantage, looking to get a very early and very good start into this round. But Merc cutting off Silent means that it's not quite down and out for Bandscoast. And another kill for Franklin. Hold on, they've evened it back up. After a horrendous start, they've evened it back up. And Franklin, thinking better of that aggression on bottom red, elects to just hold his positions because he's potentially looked up at the clock. He sees that it's just 35 seconds left. And even though Bandscoast have enough space and enough time to go for this plant, they're going to need to rotate from rafters. And Aiden cuts it off without it even going down. That's case down. That's 20 seconds left. And Friendship Team are scrambling. We're getting down into the dying seconds of this round. Now Kicks does find the case, does find the space, but he's looking for the kill instead. And as Aiden gets the cover down, Kicks finds one. Hold on, this is very, very doable, but Aiden with a shotgun, even at mid-range, shuts it off. Him individually just had an absolute heater. He was in there to even it back up. He was in there to put the case on the ground, and he's in there to close out the round for Bandscoast.
Talked about a little bit earlier on, maybe even the first round, that Bandscoast has one of the worst defensive win rates at a 30% win rate, 33% to be exact. winning 3 rounds already defines them at least a even half, a 50% win rate. Even with essentially the failure, the mistiming of Vic Bands, it is, it's sometimes a little bit hard to do. But just the factor, again, another round where Friendship Team go into an execution phase with a very one-dimensional push. Nobody inside of construction, nobody trying to put pressure onto red stairs or the vertical below. This was because they just didn't have necessarily a lot of time. A lot of just the lack of focusing on one point costed them the round. And if you continue to give Bandscoast these rounds, these executions where they just have to look at one direction, shut down 1 to 2 entry points from Friendship Team, then it's simple. It's basic math for them, and they'll shut it down. The Friendship Team, they need to change something up very quickly because whatever they're doing right now isn't having any effect.
But also, yeah, it was a one-dimensional attack, but Friendship Team just got all of the checklist items done. They had got wall open, they took rafters off of a misplay by Vic Bands in that position. The Bandscoast were able to fight back from that position very, very well. If they can just continue on that train, even if things don't go well for them early round, they can just keep their aggression up, go for pressure in the mid round, and it seems like just continue to pull rounds out of absolutely thin air.
It really goes back to the idea of just Bandscoast playing more together, not going for those aggressive plays, those overzealous swings, relying on your teammate hand in hand to force those 1vx's onto Friendship Team. Something that Bandscoast put a lot of importance on fixing, really trying to improve on putting themselves in better win conditions by just having better decisions. Kicks row, trying to find Stompin, but Stompin being able to understand that he just needs to play passive, wait for that player, just extend a little bit further, that he doesn't want to give his life away this early on.
But an opening pick for Friendship Team instead, and another from top red. Hold on, they're just taking this position. Yes, Stompin was holding. Yes, Stompin was holding everything down, but the rest of his team crumbles, and even though Vic finds 1 onto Kicks, that's all that Bandscoast have been able to find in this round. Friendship Team now giving Kicks complete access to all of the cams of Bandscoast. And although Vic again does find yet another kill, it might just be a consolation because it's a 1 versus 3 and the rest of Friendship Team are bearing down. But Eddie just throws himself into the fire, Silent with a trade, and that, I mean, in a 3 versus 1, from a former tier 1 team, you've got to assume that they played a little bit safer than that. Works out anyway, though.
I mean, as I said before, no matter how you win a round, it is still a round 1 in a map in matchup that looks like it's going to be a back and forth, a tooth and nail every round, no matter the team that wins. Every small victory you can get, you'll take. And a factor that we didn't necessarily suspect in this matchup of Stompin just having a little bit of a slow game. Not to necessarily say that he's having a terrible game, still putting himself in relatively winnable situations, but just not being able to shut down those engagements, those gunfights. And it hasn't costed Bandscoast a whole lot. They still are in relatively a winnable position to get that 4-2 half. But if Friendship Team are able to get a 3-3 split, not necessarily the point where you want to start to worry, but when you start to prop up a question of will Bandscoast be able to get at least 3 rounds on their attack? And I think you need players, especially if Stompin will continue to put himself in these very aggressive positions, to shut them down in the last round, then it will be all but hopes for Friendship Team to get that last.
People do talk about Stompin being very, very good, and yes, he is. And I know that this might, put me into the crosshairs of a lot of console players,
Be
but
careful.
I think Aiden is very underrated on this lineup, and I think putting him in a more aggressive position might honestly work out very well for them because he's had these incredible impact plays on every single game that I've watched from him. Yes, Stompin is putting himself in the entry. Yes, time after time, he's the one looking for that opening pick, but Aiden, the player behind, has just shut out so many more rounds than I think people really give him credit for. Either way, Merc is going to be the spearhead in this round, not quite finding the initial kill, but the shots finally hit onto Silent. Stompin with another, as talking about him not quite finding openings. not quite being the player that was needed of Bandscoast, but him and Merc are just running through Friendship Team right now. You talk about them maybe getting a favorable split, and right now it seems like that's exactly what's going to happen, as Kix is the last alive and a flawless end to a 4-2 half from Bandscoast.
Now, I'm not going to say any names, but I remember somebody telling me that Bandscoast, they will put up a good matchup, but the sheer fundamentals and experience from Friendship Team would eventually beat them out. And getting a 4-2 half, better than they relatively have on any defensive half in the previous 2 matchups against Friendship Team. Even if you factor in a lot of hero plays coming out from Merc, M80X also, as you said before, having a lot of his own efforts being put in, they still got 4 rounds on Friendship Team, the team that was just in the grand finals of Element 4. And now we put ourselves in a perspective, rather, that this Bandscoast team isn't really winning off of that pure gun skill, but something that has been a problem for them throughout this entire roster's iteration, all the way back to E4, before the Stompin' days, was consistency, that structure to play off of each other and win rounds as a team, rather than individual players going huge. And that's exactly the reason that they got that 4-2 half, and that's something scary that we didn't really necessarily expect full-heartedly against Friendship Team.
Who was the person that said that Bandscoast were going to falter to the structure of Friendship Team?
If I say that, their head will be on a stick within an hour. You know how the console community gets.
No, that's fair. That's fair.
They're
that's
passionate.
Fair, that's fair. Does it start with a NOM?
No, it doesn't. It is one of the people who are behind the scenes, though. I'll give you that. I'll give you that little clue, that little hint.
Okay. All right. Well, either way, that prediction looks completely false, as you're talking about for 4-2. But even as we switch onto their attacking side, Bandscoast are starting out hot with an opening pick onto Eddie. He's been quiet. Yes, he is one of their more supportive players, but even still, losing his life this early on does not bode well, especially against the continued aggression for Bandscoast, because yes, they found the opening, but they are just rearing for more.
Yeah, and another factor is, you talked about how Aiden has had a lot of, overall success, but overall this Bandscoast roster is so even-handed. Any player can go huge. Some games, all players having relatively the same stats. Stompin's still in a really good position to have a great round, a great map overall. And you can see that Friendship Team, they're playing passive. They're kind of backing away, not necessarily like a hurt dog, but they are respecting Bandscoast on this tack a lot. And that's something not only that Bandscoast really wants, but if you look at their 2 previous games, it's something that sometimes on their attacking rounds that they need.
At this point, Bandscoast, yes, they found the opening, but they've really slowed down, and it seems like Friendship Team are not willing to throw body after body to try to get this man advantage back. They're more content to just drop back and play their positions. What this does for Bandscoast's attack, though, is it forces them into the aggressive position, but that's going to work out either way. Now that they're finally hitting sight, they have another pick, Nick finding another towards sight, and they're well aware that there is still a lurker towards top floor, and even though Kix finds another, Franklin with one onto Nick means that Kix is the last alive, and with the smoke of his teammate just now fading, he's going to have a position to try to find a long angle, but he's cut off sight. Bandscoast in these post-plan positions with better guns and better sights, and 30 seconds on the clock for him to retake seems completely undoable. Bandscoast looking for the celebration kill, but it's just one looking for that. He's gonna snap him off. A great shot onto Aiden, but once again, the rest of the players of Bandscoast are playing their positions very well. 15 seconds on the clock. Kix looking for anything on Motodor, but they're not going to give it to him. Close in the corner is one, and as 7 seconds falls off the clock, Merc still finding the kill, but it didn't even matter, because even if he had gotten to Diffuser, it still would not have been enough. Another round for Bandscoast.
I'm just really happy and proud of this Bandscoast roster. You saw in that last engagement...
I'm glad you're happy.
You saw in that last engagement, both the Hibana and the Ace swung together. Last week, that's an engagement that Bandscoast probably would have had that Habana or the Ace on a completely different side, giving 2 separate 1v1s to Friendship Team, but already just making so many improvements on the small things. You're talking to Aiden Tax, as I spoke about in the pre-show, saying that they wanted to put a lot of emphasis on fixing just those isolated picks, allowing those to happen, doubling up, playing off of their teammates rather than their isolated engagements. And we've seen a lot of effort, not only effort, but also success come off of those doubled up plays. And it is really a factor where they were mistakes that it made me mad because they were very simple mistakes that were easy to fix. And it doesn't really matter when you fix them because Bandscoast, they fixed them well in time, only 2 rounds away from beating Friendship Team and getting their very first win in this group stage.
And also looking really, really good doing it. Not just only securing themselves a 4-2 split, which, you know, this map has leaned more even, but a 4-2 split is nothing to scoff at for the defense. It's kind of just still a bit of a standard split. But for Bandscoast, finding that opening pick on their attack means that they've not only just continued the momentum of their defensive half, but they're also, like you said, 2 rounds away from just shutting Friendship Team out of this. And that's pretty impressive once again because, yeah, this is a former Tier 1 core. Although Nick and Ash have not played at that Tier 1 level, Hicks, Silent, and Eddie have been for several seasons and for quite a long time together as well.
And keep in mind, currently Friendship Team is at the top of Group B, 2-0, both of those wins being in regulation, a 7-3 and a 7-5. This is a team that not only in previous achievements have been fantastic, but in this tournament, in the group stage in recent, have been phenomenal. And just the fact that Bandscoast have been able to do this. Merc, the entirety of Bandscoast know that this smoke is on main stairs. This smoke has to get aggressive. There's no way he's going to be able to rotate back down. The nade almost pushes him out, wasting all of this utility, but at the same time, he's able to get away. He gets the kill onto Merc with it.
There's no way he should have been able to get away with that. Nades at his feet and all the utility and all the members, all the King's horses and all the King's men, and somehow he still makes it out without cracking his head. Opening for Friendship Team's defense and onto Merc, no less. A hard breach, but just that incredibly impactful player. A minute left for them to scramble and find some sort of entryway into Friendship Team's defense.
Again, you can see Silent just trying to prepare, expecting a push into dirt. It won't happen. The majority of this round, Bandscoast understand that they have to try to get a quick plant. The entirety of this execution phase will be on this kitchen drop. Stompin using a lot of his Bs to try and clear out a position, carve a way for Franklin to get in the bomb site and get that bomb down. But with Ash watching the drop, Nick all the way by AKs and Silent and dirt, it's going to be a very difficult task to complete.
Ooh, but the drop comes in and Ash with the kill. Yet another great defensive start, but 2 from Bandscoast. Hold on, momentum shift, and everything not quite going Bandscoast's way. It's kills bound for Friendship Team. Vic, the last alive, finds one onto Silent. It's a 1-4, and he finds another. Bandscoast almost let it slip, but they find it back. Match point, 6-2.
When all the cards are in the favor of Friendship Team, they get the drop. Stompin' and Vic Bands, they go huge. They just pull picks. They pull the round out of a magic hat like they are a magician and get that match point. That team play, the coordination, playing off of the teammates. All of it going perfectly. Huge. Down 2 players on 5v3. The positions. Even the kill on a Stompin' coming out from Kicks row. It's a round that they should not have won. But understanding the problems, understanding that they need to play together, play as a team, play hand in hand, and that's exactly what they did, giving Vic Bands an opportunity, 1 shot, and he took it. Ate all of the mama's spaghetti, nothing on his sweater, and Bandscoast just 1 round away from getting the very first.
Setting the welcome mat.
And not only just those closeout kills from Vic Bands right at the very end, but Stompin' able to find 2 incredible impact kills because, yes, it's just, 1 or 2 kills, And sometimes it's difficult to tell, oh, are these impact kills, are these incredibly important? Well, at a man disadvantage when time is low and you're trying to get into a position where you can execute on low time, those 2 kills mean just that much more. And for Bandscoast, having players that can activate in the dying seconds of the round is just so important. And yes, they look really good right now against Friendship Team, but it's going to be a very, very long night for them. They're sitting at match point, and even if they can get this done very quick, they'll have to get right back to their setups and play another 2 games because they're back against Reality TV and then back against 1 HP right after that. So no matter what way you cut it, it's been a great start for Bandscoast, but you've got to keep this momentum up the entire night.
Bandscoast moving a lot more slow, just rocking and prodding, trying to figure out this extension over inside of CC and even into Raptors. A player on top of red. This is a position that Friendship Team wants to deny. 4 players over here, and Silent with 2, shutting down Aiden and Stompin'. And now, the entirety of the round now, having a 5th player almost rotate over, is going to fall down to the bomb site. And it's going to need to be Bandscoast to find another opportunity when losing the first 2, starting to dwindle down, still have not been able to push out Ash inside of Raptors. Vic trying to do the best he can, but there's just not a whole lot going their way right now.
And that's what's needed out of Friendship Team. An individual to step up and have it play like that onto Stompin', onto Aiden, onto the player to get the 2 impact kills that they needed last round, and onto another that has been great time after time in the late round. Silent finds another onto Vic, and although Franklin finds 1 off of that con breach, he's still in a 1 versus 4. Needs to ace clutch to get through this round and put his team through. He's got 50 seconds to work it, but he picks the wrong direction, gets a wrong timing, and gets shut out of that round. Friendship Team breathe a sigh of relief as they have 1 more round, 1 more match point to stave off. But if they want to keep doing it, they need to fight up against the wall for 3 straight rounds to even get it to overtime.
Another huge round, and 3 rounds on the defense in a row isn't really that tall of a task to ask out of Friendship Team. It is more than well possible. I don't want to put into perspective that Friendship Team has no winning opportunity here. They more than sure do. But my problem lies in how they've won essentially 2 out of their 3 rounds. Very first round being won, Silent having an ace. The round previously, not only did Silent get the 2 opening kills, but at the end had a 3K. Both rounds required Silent to go absolutely huge, giving Friendship Team not only an opportunity, but putting them in a very comfortable position. Half of the round being a 5v3, eventually just falling down to the 5v2, one after another. It kept falling apart. But the problem is, we've seen Bandscoast shut down players like Eddie playing very aggressive in the very first attacking round for them, and Silent in previous rounds even before that. And if they don't have him show him up here, I haven't really seen anything out of Friendship Team that they can really compensate for losing Silent.
And yeah, just a cursory glance at the scoreline for both of these teams really reinforces your point. It's pretty even across the board on Bandscoast. Yes, Vic and Merc are doing quite well, but the rest of the team is very close in tow. You look over towards the other side, and it's 11-7. Hicks are even, and the rest of the team really struggling to get into the kill department on here. If Silent can have a massive impact play like he did on the previous round, then the rest of the team can't follow. But if it leads off with an opening pick for Bandscoast, like it did in this round, then it's going to be on the shoulders of Silent to fight back, and it seems like he is very well up to the challenge, but doesn't quite hit his shots on this round. It's 2 kills for Bandscoast, and it just keeps rolling. Merc with another onto kicks, and Nick needs to find an answer right here and right now, because he's the last alive as Eddie falls, and they are very, very well aware of where he is. A 1 versus 5, and although the shield covers him for just a little bit longer, it's all going to end at the hands of Stompin'. A very, very clean victory
Coach
and a
Buff.
great start for them for Bandscoast. But yeah, Coach Buff.
Yeah.
Honestly, that's a very good call.
Yeah.
It kind of was just Merc going insane. The rest of the team did very well around him, but like we said, it's going to be a long, long night for Bandscoast.
Still 2 matchups in front of Bandscoast. Their last 2 matchups. They wanted this header. They wanted 3 games in a row. This is something that they welcomed, a challenge. And the very first opponent, the very first roadblock in the way has been dealt with. Friendship team lose in regulation after going flawless at 7-3 at 7-5. And now a 3-7 added, being dealt by Bandscoast.
Guys, ace on round 1 seemed like disaster was all but guaranteed. But Bandscoast answered back, threw the pedal to the metal, and they did not let up until the end. Irish, we'll start with you right now. It looks like Friendship Team might need to work on some bonding exercises.
Oh, most certainly. Because again, yes, it started off with an ace. It started off with individual dominance from Silent, but the rest of Friendship Team didn't really do all that much behind it. It wasn't like Bandscoast just fully activating around Merc. It was kind of just Silent, and the rest of the team, besides Kicks going even, didn't really live up to the standard that Silent set very early on.
Goose, Bandscoast, you said it often, you said it early. They needed a dub, and this wasn't quite the team that we expected it to happen against. Walk us through this W that just went down, especially the flawless at the end.
One big point I want to keep in mind is no matter if they had a player being subbed in, losing a crucial player that's been on this iteration, this roster for years, even all the way back to when they played T2, this still was a map that Friendship Team owned through in and throughout. In Bandscoast, they walked in and took it. And it's not a situation where Friendship Team gave them a difficult time. As I spoke about before, 2 out of the 3 rounds, Silent needed to go huge. And it really does feel like those problems that we saw in week 1 in their very first 2 best of ones, adding Merc, whether or not you could say that he essentially put them in better positions than they were without him being there. Nonetheless, Bandscoast playing more together, those problems, it looks like it's been worked out.
Okay, so I guess the big takeaway here, don't take Bandscoast to Clubhouse unless you're wanting to watch a TED Talk on how it's supposed to be done, my friends. It's a triple header. They've got, as you said, a lot more work to get in tonight, but a little bit of that pressure off as they took down one of the better teams inside of the tournament here. So with that being said, let's get them back into the lobby. Take us to a quick break as we sit back and relax and get ready for that third